This week on Theater Talk.
Hooray for Hollywood. You may be homely in your neighborhood, but if you think that you can be an actor, see Mr. Factor, he'd make a monkey look good. I search for phrases to sing your praises, but there aren't any magic adjectives to tell you all you are. You're just too marvelous for words like
glorious, glamorous, and that old standby.
Amorous. It's all so wonderful, I'll never find the words that say enough, tell enough, I mean
they just aren't swell enough.
You're much too much,
and just too very, very,
to ever be in Webster's dictionary. And so I'm borrowing a love song from the birds
to tell me that I'm marvelous,
to tell you that you're marvelous, too marvelous for words.
That was Anna Bergman and Steve Ross singing the great song Too Marvelous for Words with lyrics by Johnny Mercer. Johnny Mercer is the subject of tonight's Theater Talk. I'm Michael Riedel of the New York Post.
And I'm the show's producer, Susan Haskins.
The lyrics of Johnny Mercer have been collected in this substantial volume, The Complete Lyrics of Johnny Mercer, out from Knopf. And here to talk about Mercer, we have the editors of the book, Barry Day, our friend who edited the great book, The Letters of Noel Coward. Welcome back to Theater Talk.
Nice to be here.
And another guest who's been here before, Roger Kimball, biographer of Cole Porter and George Gershwin and Richard Rodgers, and the editor of Reading Lyrics. Welcome back to Theater Talk. All right. Too Marvelous for Words, Barry, in some ways really encapsulates so much of what Mercer is about, does it not?
I think so. I mean, this man had an incredible vocabulary, highly intelligent, highly educated, and Irving Berlin once said about him, he knows all the 6-syllable words, but he also knows when not to use them. And this one is ironic because a man who had all the words has a hit song about a man who can't find the words. And he uses quite a lot of words in not finding them.
Isn't there a funny story about him writing Too Marvelous for Words?
Well, yes, he was working with Richard Whiting, his collaborator, and he was so frustrated. They were told they had to write at least 10 additional choruses. And Johnny was moaning and groaning and said he wanted to quit. And Whiting said, no, you can't do that. And so Whiting went out and bought a copy of Webster's dictionary and brought it over to Johnny's house. And he said, here, get busy.
Marvelous. Johnny Mercer came from Savannah, I believe, the South.
Yes.
It's always struck me he really was an outsider in the world of songwriters, because when we think of the great songwriters, Gershwin, Rodgers, Larry Hart, these were New York guys. And this was a Southern boy. Does that give him the sort of Mercer character and flavor, his being an outsider?
He was a genuine Southerner. They all went to Lindy's, and that's as near to the South as most of them ever got. He grew up there. He heard the music of all sorts of people around him, and somebody said about him, he always had the South in his mouth.
Yes,
and he did.
Yes.
He came from a patrician Southern family. His ancestors, were with George Washington, and all through the 19th century were very prominent in Savannah. And his father lost his money in 1927, and Johnny had to quit school. And because there wasn't any more money for him to continue. He was going to go to Princeton and never got there. And he decided he wanted to become an actor. And so he went to New York, and he did have a sort of a brief fling at acting in straight plays. And that wasn't really the beginning of his career. The career began because he won a contest to sing with Paul Whiteman. In
the famous orchestra leader.
The famous Paul Whiteman. And when he won that, he began to really find more and more work as a writer. And in 1933, he met and worked, well, in 32, he had met Hoagy Carmichael. And in 33, they produced a song called Lazy Bones. And That was his first big hit.
That was his first hit.
Yes.
You say he had this connection to the South, and that sort of this old genteel South that we think of. But did he also have a connection to the New South and the black music of the South when he produced things like Blues in the Night?
Yes.
This Southern sound that was emerging, that wasn't people drinking mint juleps, that there was this new gritty sound.
He absorbed everything he heard. Every kind of music was part of him. And that can't be said to be true of so many of the other songwriters. They knew what they knew from where they were, but that was foreign territory to them. They would need a passport to go down there. He never needed a passport anywhere.
Yeah,
he felt at home.
Well, I was going to say, we think of, Al Jolson doing Swanee, but I mean, that's not authentic.
No.
That's the
Absolutely
bonus
not,
sound,
no.
yeah.
Mercer began in New York as an actor and then a songwriter, but very early on he goes to Hollywood, where he wrote, I guess, arguably some of his most famous songs. What drew him to Hollywood, and what was his experience in Hollywood?
I don't think money.
Money.
That'll do it.
No, he got a job as an actor in movies. And 2 movies that he appeared in, he wrote songs for. And he did not have a sustained movie career as a performer, but as a songwriter, he blossomed.
He was a very modest man, too. He said at one point, I tried to be a cartoonist and failed. I tried to be a singer and failed. So naturally, I drifted into songwriting, which is not exactly the case.
That's not the case, though, because
He didn't sail as a
this
singer.
is something we forget. He was one of the leading singers
Yes, he was.
Absolutely.
with Bing Crosby
Yes.
and Sinatra, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a little earlier, Sinatra.
No,
but
but
he
he-
was a famous
He
as a
was. He
singer.
was
Very
putting
famous
himself
singer.
down by...
He wrote, I guess, the anthem of Hollywood, Hooray for Hollywood, which is a cynical take, though,
Well,
on his
he went there
experience.
and he realised that he couldn't take it totally seriously. So it was a little tongue-in-cheek, shall we say, but it has become the anthem, is it not? You don't have anything about Hollywood without a few bars of this.
Yeah.
Hooray for Hollywood. That's screwy ballyhooey Hollywood, where any office boy or young mechanic can be a panic with just a good-looking pan. And any barmaid can be a star maid if she dances with or without her fan. Hooray for Hollywood, where you're terrific if you're even good, where anyone at all from Shirley Temple to Amy Semple is equally understood. Get out and try your luck, you might be Donald Duck. Hooray for Hollywood. Hooray for Hollywood. That phony super coney Hollywood. They come from Chillicotes and Paducas with their bazookas to get their names up in lights. All armed with photos from local rotos, with their hair in ribbons and legs in tights. Hooray for Hollywood. You may be homely in your neighborhood, but if you think that you can be an actor, see Mr. Factor, he'd make a monkey look good. Within a half an hour, you'll look like Tyrone Power. Hooray for Hollywood.
Who is Mr. Factor?
Max Factor.
Factor.
Max Factor? Oh, the
Makeup man.
cosmetic man,
Yeah,
of
the
course.
makeup
She would
man.
know, and if you don't.
Max Factor. I love that lyric because there is just a skillful use of pop culture with a reference to Donald Duck there. So you get the sense he's just absorbing, as you said earlier, everything that's going on.
Somebody said about him, he was spectacular in the vernacular.
Oh, very good.
Kind of an extension of that, I
very
think.
good.
That's very
Pick
good.
up
Yep.
local references.
A rather heavy book, guys. Is he just about the most prolific of all the great lyricists?
Irving Berlin would be right up there with him. It'd be pretty close.
Right, right.
We didn't find every song he wrote, but we found a great many, and I would say it's almost a draw between them.
Where did you find the songs? How did you piece all of these songs together?
Much of it's in the Georgia State Library, because that's where his books and papers went. Other than that, you go to the composers he worked with and their descendants, and you winkle it out from there.
How did he work? What were his working habits?
Well, normally he liked to hear the music first when he was working with another collaborator. Of course, he worked with 230 collaborators during his incredible career, and also wrote a number of wonderful songs by himself.
Yeah, yeah.
A
Music as
Dream
well.
and I'm an Old Cowhand and Something's Got to Give. He wrote music as well.
But why do you think he wanted to hear the music first?
He wanted to immerse himself in the songs. I mean, total immersion. If you can, a song like Laura,
That's a good example.
You can't imagine a better evocation of the film in that song. It's just, and he hadn't seen he just got into the song. That was it.
People think they saw the film and heard the song, but they didn't.
No.
Right, because he wrote the lyrics to
they heard David Raxton's melody,
yeah,
which became so popular that the producers said, hey, we've got to get a lyric to this. They went to Hammerstein. He would have done it, but he also wanted to publish it. They wouldn't have that. They went to Irving Caesar, who came up with nothing worthwhile. And then Raxton said to them, Mercer, use Mercer. And Mercer said, I just absorbed it and then found words for it.
And both Berlin and Porter said it was the favorite song of those that they hadn't written. They've thought that much of Laura.
How come so many collaborators? Why did he write with so many people? Why didn't he find one person and stick to him the way, Oscar Hammerstein and Larry Hart did Richard Rodgers?
A few possible suggestions on that. I think if Richard Whiting had lived, that would have been
Too Marvelous for Words with him.
They had a very short career of just over a year together, that he would have stayed with Whiting. But when Whiting died so early in Johnny's career, it made it very difficult for him. Johnny was clearly restless. He was clearly looking for something every day. He wanted to write a song with someone. And when he ran Capitol Records, which he did for several years, he'd hear people come in to sing for him, to present material for him. He would suggest writing a song with the person. Many of them were only one song.
Who was it who said he will collaborate with the first person who walks through the door in the morning?
Whoever said it correctly. I think that he was lonely. I think he was ill at ease at times, and particularly in his later years.
I think classic also was Hoagy Carmichael. Carmichael was much more successful earlier and a rather tough man to work with, and he was talking down to Johnny felt, so he was not at ease with him. In later years, the relationship matured. He said if the two of us, and Carmichael said the same, if we'd stuck to it and worked together, we'd have been as successful as Rodgers and Hart, Rodgers and Hammerstein, and they probably would.
Robert, you say he was lonely.
Yes.
Now, throughout the book, there's pictures of him with his wife,
Yes.
who he married quite young, and then you have pictures of them quite old. What was that personal life, that marriage like?
It was an uneasy marriage. They were passionately in love when they got together and married in the early 30s. But there was unhappiness, and Johnny liked to drink.
Yeah.
And when he drank on occasion, he became difficult to be around, and often had to apologize the next day for his behavior because he was a nasty drunk.
Ah,
Really?
interesting.
And so he wasn't altogether comfortable. And I know when he had difficulty finding opportunities in the movies to write songs, he'd get 2 or 3 a year, and that would be it. He was extremely depressed about that. Why doesn't anybody want to employ me anymore? Here he had been at the top of the profession for quite a while. And so he was frustrated. I know Margaret Whiting said it was just painful to see him.
It's
like
very
that.
interesting because in this book there's so many songs.
Love songs.
But knock them out of the park hits. But then so many songs that you haven't heard of, that you don't know, these ones that were written during his frustration, and it's interesting to see how many tries you have to do before you get a home run.
Yeah, the other thing about him, I think, is he was in love with the idea of love.
Yes.
So many of the songs are about wanting to be in love, or what happens when I lose it and it's bound to go away. So he wrote love songs about love songs.
Well, we do have a song which I think speaks to the point about writing about a love song about a love song, How Little We Know.
Right.
Does that illustrate the point you were
I think
making?
it does, yes. I mean, it also illustrates another point about his background. To Have and Have Not, 1944. Lauren Bacall sashes up to the bar where Hoagy Carmichael, cricket, is playing. And in the background, Andy Williams is singing the lyric. She did not sing that.
right.
Andy Williams dubbed her voice.
That's Andy Williams on
The
that?
very young Andy Williams.
Yeah, he was a kid. Yeah.
I'd like to get Lauren Bacall's perspective on that, but...
Don't think you will.
I wouldn't even risk it unless you're fireproof.
How Little We Know.
Maybe it happens this way. Maybe we really belong together. But after all, how little we know. Maybe Maybe it's just for a day. Love is as changeable as the weather, and after all, how little we know. Who knows why an April breeze never remains? Why stars in the trees hide when it rains? Love comes along, casting a spell. Will it sing you a song? Will it say your farewell? Who can tell? Maybe you're meant to be mine. Maybe I'm only supposed to stay in your arms a while, as others have done. Is this what I've waited for? Am I the one? Oh, I hope in my heart that it's so, in spite of how little we know. In spite of how little we know.
Perfectly.
The Broadway World. He didn't have a big hit Broadway show. Why?
It was not a comfortable milieu for him in any way. He wrote songs. He was not a person who wrote dramatic entities that could fit into the theatrical world. He wasn't comfortable doing that. And he had some bad luck as well. I mean, some of his scores are much better than we realize. A Good Companions, which he wrote late with Andre Previn, is a delightful piece.
Not known here at all, is it?
It's really good. It's a good score, and it's well worth hearing. I think Texas Little Darlin' with Robert Emmett Dolan has been underrated. It was written in '49. But he had fame of a kind with St. Louis Women in '46. Didn't run long, but people thought, aside from Come Rain or Come Shine, it was a tremendous score. And then a popular hit with Lil Abner in 1956 with Gene DePaul,
Right.
which didn't have any big hit songs, but was a pretty successful show.
But not a high.
No, not a
aesthetic
big
He never got the
blockbuster.
My Fair Lady.
Do you think he wanted a My Fair Lady? Was he hunger for that
Yeah, sure.
success?
I mean, he
think
wanted
so.
to be as good as he could be at everything he tackled, and he was very good. But he said himself, I just wasn't very good at shows.
Well, and you have a wonderful quote where he also said, why, basically, I paraphrase, why should I put up with all the rancor and all the difficulty you have to put up with people when I can just write a song, one song for a movie and get the same money and not have to deal with the
So
problems.
have a lot more than the same money, yeah.
A collaboration issue.
Sure. Well, he himself had written so many hit songs and even recorded and sung many of them, unlike a lot of the people who wrote shows, his competitors. So why would he be bothered with doing all that? He didn't have to be, and he wasn't. And he also, I think, when he wrote the book shows, wrote for the book shows, he found great trouble in getting inside the head of a character. He was Johnny Mercer. He could write about that. He could write a song about you, and he could do it sitting here. But when you've got to get in somebody's head and express them in words, he wasn't that person.
Among the 200 and how many collaborators?
30.
230. Arguably, perhaps the greatest American composer of them all, Jerome Kern. Not American, but I mean American music. Was it a good collaboration? Did they like each other? Did they get along well?
I would say they liked each other very much indeed.
Yeah.
It's a great shame they never did another full movie together, because it was a full movie score. And as Robert was saying earlier...
What was the movie?
You Were Never Lovely.
You Were Never Lovely, yeah.
1942.
Yeah.
So many of the things he did was a song in a film, a title song in later years, but a full score really showed what he could do. Kern really admired him a great deal.
Very much.
The song, Robert, You Were Never Lovelier. Do you know, we have a little history of that song? A little bit?
Not very much history. We know that Fred sang it in the movie.
Yeah,
And
Fred
they
Astaire.
needed a titled song for the movie, so there it is.
You Were Never Lovelier.
Yes.
And then they danced.
You were never lovelier, you were never so fair. Dreams were never lovelier, pardon me if I stare. Down the sky the moonbeams fly to light your face. I can only say they chose the proper place. You were never lovelier, and to coin a new phrase, I was never luckier in my palmiest days. Make a note and you can quote me, honor bright. You were never lovelier than you are tonight.
Now, my particular favorite era of Mercer's life is when he worked with Henry Mancini. Days of Wine and Roses and Moon River. How did that collaboration come about?
I don't know how they got together, but it was a project that Henry was engaged for, I believe. And it might have been the Peter Gunn television show. Mm-hmm. And he was asked whom he would like as a collaborator. And he said Johnny Mercer.
Well, he picked the best.
Yeah. Johnny Mercer was everybody's favorite choice to be a collaborator. Mm. You know, Fred Astaire engaged him for 5 movies he did for Fred. So they started working together, and of course with Moon River they created a song for the ages, one of the great, great American songs. A song that distills the experience of living in the South. The early years when he was out picking berries. We have the great, great line, My Huckleberry Friend. And a song that has just reached millions and millions of people. Brilliantly sung by Audrey in the movie.
Mm-hmm. Which also brought, I think, Holly Golightly. He was inspired by the persona of her.
Again, this goes back to immersing himself into
Mercer
what
himself,
the movie was.
when he sees the movie or reads the script, Holly was a southerner living up in New York and feeling lonely. Mm-hmm. And he could sympathize with that because that's what he was too.
Exactly.
So he wrote a song about this girl who was sitting in New York but thinking about the South, as he always did himself. So that was it. And then he couldn't think of a title for it. It was going to be Blue River,
yes, Blue
Red
River was serious.
June River.
And then he discovered that a friend of his, Joseph Meyer, had written a song in 1927 called Blue River. So he couldn't make it Blue River.
Mm. But how did he get the title?
Well, in despair, he went to the map. And he looked at the map because he remembered that Stephen Foster, writing Swanee River, had done precisely that. Didn't know the name that he wanted, saw it on the map. He found this thing called Moon River just near Savannah. That did it.
And the line, that great line, which to me is the signature Mercer line, My Huckleberry Friend, that was in there originally because it was called Blue River.
Yes.
And so the river, the color of
blue huckleberries.
And he used to eat huckleberries when he went out just wandering around with his friends.
But he forgot to change the lyric.
He forgot to change it, and he said to somebody later, you know, I really made a mistake. I should have removed that. But at the time, he wouldn't remove it when people said, that doesn't make any sense. But the evocation of Huck Finn and of that beautiful world was so essential a part of the song. And that he kept it in, and that was fortunate.
Yeah. Well, somebody said about him, he was really Mark Twain and Stephen Foster combined. The words of Mark Twain, the lyrical melody sense of Foster, that's what he was. He was the modern version of that. The tradition went on.
And we have a treat for you now.
Moon River, wider than a mile, I'm crossing you in style someday. Old dream maker, you heartbreaker, wherever you're going, I'm going your way. Two drifters off to see the world, there's such a lot of world to see. We're after the same rainbow's end, waiting round the bend, my huckleberry friend, Moon River and me.
Well done, everybody. I want to thank Anna Bergman for joining us tonight. She's touring in a Richard Rodgers show around the country now. And Steve Ross, whom I've enjoyed in the cabaret world here in New York, who's got a new album out. Steve Ross, I remember him well, the lyrics of Alan J. Lerner. We'll have you back to sing a
Thank
little
you.
about
I'd love
this, I
that.
hope. And our friends Barry Day and Robert Kimball, who are the editors of the complete lyrics of Johnny Mercer, out now from Knopf. So good night, and thanks for joining us on Theater Talk. You can sign up for viewer updates at theatertalk.org.
Or you can Twitter us.
Our thanks to the Friends of Theater Talk for their significant contribution to this production. Theater Talk is made possible in part by the Frederick Lowe Foundation, the Eleanor Naylor Dana Charitable Trust, the Alan S. Gordon Foundation, the Corey and Bob Donnelly Charitable Fund, Carrie J. Fries, the Dorothy Strelson Foundation, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, and the New York State Council on the Arts, a state agency.
We welcome your questions or comments for Theater Talk. Thank you and good night.